Thanks for clicking. My name is Mark Mitchell. I'm a mortgage broker here in London, Ontario. Last week, the Liberal Party and the election campaign of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau released their plan for Canada's real estate market. Among the promises released were the Home Buyers Bill of Rights, which we've already gone through on this channel, as well as a number of other promises aimed at helping to make Canada's real estate market a little bit more affordable for the average home buyer. But what I want to go over today is the portion of the campaign which promises to increase the supply of housing throughout Canada and help stabilize the prices a little bit. As there was a report by Scotiabank which noted that out of all the G7 countries, we are the most short supplied in housing. Per 1,000 people, we actually have the lowest amount of housing units throughout the G7 countries. But I want to go over the issue of supply, as I think that has the most potential to have an actual impact on the price of real estate in Canada. There was quite a few other promises made in the election campaign, including ending blind bidding, and let me tell you, after the Liberal campaign said that they would consider amending the criminal code to outlaw blind bidding, the real estate boards, at least here in Ontario, lost their marbles over the idea that the government would overreach and use the criminal code to regulate the real estate industry. With that aside, though, as I think that actually raising the supply could have more of an impact on the price of houses than getting rid of blind bidding and putting real estate agents and home sellers in jail. As I think that will have the most impact, I want to go over the top 3 ways in which the Trudeau campaign said that they will increase the supply of housing in Canada. So we'll go over each of the 3 manners that they want to increase supply, look at what they've done so far, and whether or not their measures will be effective in helping to cool down the real estate market. So the Trudeau campaign listed 6 ways in which they want to increase the housing supply in Canada. But for the purposes of this video, I just want to go through the 3 in which they were the most specific. They also talked about increasing the purchase of office space, which is a plan that's barely gotten off the ground. They talked about more Indigenous housing, which they weren't really specific on. And they talked about ending chronic homelessness, which, if it was that easy, then why haven't you done it so far? But they weren't really specific on those 3 measures. So I just want to talk about the 3 measures that which they were the most specific about, with the first one being their plan to build more affordable housing in Canada. They plan on doing this through a CMHC initiative that was already put in place in 2018. This was through the National Housing Co-Investment Strategy. Under this initiative, the CMHC helps to fund, or via direct grants and loans, the construction of affordable housing throughout Canada. The initiative was announced first in 2018 with the goal of creating 60,000 new affordable units. Since then, and listed in the campaign document and verified later on, they plan on expanding the program to put another $2.7 billion into the initiative, which sounds great. So they had an initial $13 billion that was allocated. In 2018, they want to add another $2.7 billion for a total of, let's say, around $16-17 billion for the creation or construction of affordable housing via direct grants or through low-interest loans. So all of this sounds great until you look to a report issued this last month in mid-August by the Parliamentary Budget Office, which showed that only half of the funds were allocated via the initiative had already been spent on the construction of new homes. In fact, out of all the money that was already allocated towards the program in 2018, and with their goal of creating 60,000 new homes, only 12,400 have been created to date. So they can allocate all this extra money towards it if they'd like to, a little over $2 billion extra dollars. But if they're not going to use the money they already have, I don't really see how extending or expanding to have even more money spent is supposed to increase the supply of housing. Granted, yes, there has been construction delays, obviously, throughout COVID and the pandemic, as so many industries were shut down. But I don't recall seeing an alarm bell that the pandemic was over, that construction was going to be able to start right away. The Trudeau campaign says that they want to see all these new constructed units in the next 4 to 5 years. So I don't see how they plan on doing that with the extra money when they can't even do it with the money they have, and we have an ongoing pandemic. Whether or not this is a genuine plan to create more affordable housing, Well, time will tell, but for right now, it seems like they can't spend the money that they've already spent. I don't see what promising more money is going to do. Second, and this one's very interesting for the boomer population and their kids, the Trudeau campaign wants to introduce a multi-generational home renovation tax credit. So what this does is if you have a basement suite that you want to set up for, say, your parents to come live in, and you put in a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom, so that's actually like a secondary suite, a secondary dwelling unit almost. The government will provide you with a tax credit of 15% up to $50,000. So you go and get mom and dad out of their house and you bring them to your house and you put them in your newly constructed unit, and then that creates a secondary supply, a whole nother house for that someone can buy up, and a whole nother unit that's out there in the market. So the idea is by moving more families into less homes, then that will help to increase the supply as well. And they're providing a tax credit of up to $50,000 to help to make that happen. Whether or not this will work, I mean, it could definitely help. We do have an aging boomer population, and there's a lot of parents that are starting to move in with their kids. I've seen it happen more and more in my business. And we've seen a lot of cities, including London, which is my hometown, start to put more of a focus on these secondary dwelling units and provide more licenses for people to have apartments in their basement. I think that for a long time, the cities tended to avoid stuff like this because for zoning restrictions and various other restrictions. But they do seem to definitely start to be moving more towards allowing the proliferation of these secondary dwelling units. So I think that's something that we could see become more and more the norm. So this is the Trudeau government providing at least some financial incentives to speed up that process. Whether or not mom and dad want to leave their home, that's another issue. But it is out there. It's an idea to help increase that housing supply. Third, and finally, the Trudeau government wants to provide about $4 billion towards something called the Housing Accelerator Fund. What this fund will do will incentivize the municipalities or your cities to build more housing. So, if your city builds more housing than historically they've been able to in the past, they can apply and qualify for more grants from the Trudeau government. London, Ontario, for its part, has actually started to take advantage of something like this, and is actually building a 110-unit affordable housing space that was just announced last month. So this is a way for the federal government not to get directly involved in housing, but incentivize the cities to speed up the process of creating affordable housing. Now, you will have to depend on your city to get this done, which, as we know, some city councils are more effective than others. But we do see this is a plan by the federal government that's already been used in many cities, and they do plan on expanding it to help with the creation of affordable housing, which should take some stress off of the real estate market here in Canada. So in summary, the Trudeau government wants to expand the CMHC's co-investment strategy, adding another $2.7 billion to a program that hasn't been able to spend the money that it already does have, in the hopes that it will eventually create more units. It wants to provide direct financial incentives for you to build and house the aging population of your family. So let's remove mom and dad into your basement. And third, they want to incentivize cities with direct financial incentives to have them build more affordable housing. Of those three, I can see these last two having the most effect. We do have an aging population, and we don't have enough long-term care homes for everyone, and we do need to take care of our seniors. So we will have this abundance of housing supply right now being held on by seniors who may need to move in with their kids or may need to move to said long-term care homes. So what this is doing is the government incentivizing you to do renovations on your home, incentivizing cities to build more affordable units. That could work, but it will depend on the city. As I said, some cities are more effective than others at getting affordable units through the bureaucratic pipelines. Some are more effective than others. So I would hope that those cities where the real estate market has has gone up the most, such as London, Ontario. I would hope that those city councils could push the bureaucratic wheels forward as much as they can in order to help build more housing, but time will tell on that. The first promise to expand CMHC's co-investment strategy, I mean, it's been almost 3 years and they've only built 12,000 houses. Yes, there's been a pandemic, but as far as I can tell, there still is a pandemic. So expanding a program that hasn't really worked so well so far and hasn't spent the money that it already has, I don't see how that is going to be effective in creating more housing when it's fallen 80% short of its initial goal from 60,000 to 12,000. With that said, if the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party get more specific on the promises that they've laid out for the supply of housing, we'll have more updates. Please do click like and subscribe to receive those. I also would like to go over the GDP numbers that came out today because everybody's been worried, especially on this channel as well, about inflation, but it looks like we very well might be heading towards stagflation, which is an entirely different beast. So I do want to do a video on that. Again, please click like and subscribe to get those updates, and thanks so much for watching.